Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Davidson Wicker. Davidson is a work management expert and the CEO of Ravetree, helping agencies and professional services firms get more from their project management system. Now, he's seen the same patterns play out across hundreds of teams. Tools get implemented, nobody adopts it properly, and the founder ends up back in spreadsheets within 6 months. Now, I wanted to have Davidson on because most agency owners have a project management tool, but very few have a project management culture. There's a difference, and that gap is where most delivery problems actually live. He's got the solution with his tool and methodologies. In this episode, we discuss the number one work management mistake that agencies repeat over and over, what agencies considering a new PM tool get wrong before they buy, how to enforce consistent usage across a team without micromanaging, and more. No one was asking for another community, but I've made one anyway. So what's different? The dynamic agency community is designed around access rather than content. Access to peers who've done it before. Access to experts who've designed solutions. Access to resources that have been battle tested. And right now, the price for founding members is only $97 a year. Join today so your agency has immediate access to everything you need to grow. You can join at dynamicagency.community. And now, Davidson Wicker. It's easier than ever to start an agency, but it's only getting harder to stand out and keep it alive. Join me as we explore the strategies agencies are using today to secure a better tomorrow. This is Agency Forward. So, what mistakes do you see agencies making just like over and over with work management?
Yeah. So the main one is not having sort of an owner of the product at the company who's really enforcing its use. And, we see this a lot with companies who are considering Ravetree. And, we always ask like, well, what are you using? And I actually had a LinkedIn post about this recently, but one of the categories of prospects we see is people who are jumping from tool to tool. And, to me, that's kind of a red flag. I mean, why is that? And usually it's just, there's no one at the company who's saying, look, this is what we're using and we're going to use it. And, it's as simple as that. But if you don't have someone who is kind of the advocate at the company for adopting a new tool, it doesn't work. So we really push for that with new customers. We say, look, you've got to have someone there who's, letting everyone know why you're using a new tool and how it can benefit the company. So that's really the main thing.
Yeah. As those that are jumping from tool to tool, it's like, are they just seeking that magic bullet? Like, is that they think the tool is going to solve everything for them?
Yeah, I think so. And so there's kind of two sides to this, and I'm sure you see this with what you do. But there's the mindset. Well, the tool doesn't matter. You got to have the process. Any tool will work. And then people who like me, who are running software companies are saying, well, the tool does matter. It doesn't mean that a process doesn't matter too. They both matter. And I think for the ones that are jumping around, maybe they don't have a good process and they think that having a new tool will help. Sometimes they get the one that's got the unicorns that jump across the screen or whatever. It looks flashy, but it doesn't necessarily solve the problems that they have. So yeah, I think that that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. And there's probably another layer to it as well, where you see this a lot with CRMs, where as soon as the data doesn't work in the CRM, like it's wrong, everybody knows that data is wrong. So then nobody goes to the CRM. Like they just don't want to use it. And so I imagine with, any work management tool, it's like, as soon as this doesn't show me the actual picture of where we're at with our projects and everything, it's like, what's the point in actually going in and updating? And so some of the team members won't do it. So I guess, are you seeing with a lack of ownership, is that one of the more common, experiences?
Yeah, we see that sometimes. And I think this is more common when you have separate tools. And of course, that's part of our pitch is, with Ravetree, it's an all-in-one, and you don't have that separate CRM and the separate time tracking and, add 3 other tools to the mix. But yeah, I mean, and of course, on the CRM side of things, it's the cliche is, salespeople don't want to enter data. They don't like updating things, but it's important to do it.
Mhm.
Everyone benefits by seeing updated information, and it just takes a little bit of effort. It doesn't take much to put that data in, whether it's a comment or whatever the data may be. So it is important, and I think when people realize by just spending a small amount of time, and it could literally be like 20 seconds, updating a file or whatever, the benefit you get from that,
Mhm.
it is hard to measure, but you're definitely going to benefit by putting in all the data points.
Right. Yeah, I think like data hygiene is as difficult with sales reps as like oral hygiene with toddlers, where you're just like, come on, please, we know this is going to be good for you. Please just do it.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that phrase, and that's kind of a thing also on the software side. The technical side is um, it's usually about like commenting your code, and of course now with AI, a lot of that's
mhm,
changing. But if you're not updating the comments, then people can't understand what you're doing, and one downside to that is it's almost like incorrect comments are worse than no comment.
mhm.
But yeah, that's just again on the technical side.
Yeah. No, I can definitely see that. Is out of curiosity, when an agency comes to you guys, how many tools on average are they already using to manage their work?
Yeah, so it varies. I mean, I think the most we've seen is maybe like five or six. So
Mhm,
this could be, and of course, it depends on how you want to define it. It's like this email account, but um, the utility tools aside, like email and file storage, et cetera.
mhm,
There's spreadsheets, a lot of spreadsheets. We see a lot of people that are using, a separate time tracking tool. Of course, they've got their accounting software, which they're still going to need if they're using something like Ravetree, because we don't do general ledger accounting. We do integrate with those services, though. It could be a resource management tool. We've seen companies they're using like three or four project management tools. They've
mm,
got Trello, Asana, Monday, like all at the same time, and to me that's just ridiculous. And that
yeah.
is where you have honestly, poor leadership who's just saying, well, on one hand, it sounds good. Let the teams use the tools they want to use. I mean, that sounds good and everything. Give them the freedom of choice. But at the end of the day, data is everywhere. No one knows what's going on. Um, so yeah, it could be five or six different tools.
Yeah, I guess if they are using kind of competing tools, is it more so that the different teams within the agency are just using other things, or is it they're like, hey, for this process, we really like Trello versus whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the reason for that is a bit of a mystery to me, but I think it comes down to you've got just maybe like a design team. If it's agencies doing a website, maybe there's a software team, and they all kind of have their own preference for a tool, and they run with it. Software might prefer Jira. Maybe you've got engineers who came
Mhm,
from a product company, so they're used to using Jira, and then they move into an agency setting, and they're like, well, let's just keep using that. And then designers, maybe they were freelancers before they moved to an agency, and they were used to using Trello, and then they start leading the team and they're like, well, let's just use Trello.
mhm.
And that's how you get this hodgepodge of just a bunch of different tools that are not talking to each other and, you know, make everything just disconnected and fragmented.
Right. So, what's your advice to like an agency owner who's ready to kind of simplify, move on to one platform, reduce all of those other kind of data sources? How would you recommend they get after that change so the team actually adopts it?
Yeah. So they have to really communicate why they're making the change. I think that's critical. Just simply saying, oh, we're moving to a new platform. Okay. Well, you're just telling me what we're doing, but why are we doing it? I think the why is really, really critical. And, once people understand, then they're not going to, you know, get upset when they have to log time, right? I mean, no one
Mhm.
likes logging time. That's kind of the big thing that a lot of agencies are doing, and no one wants to log their time. It could be a law firm or anybody who's doing billable hours. It's not the most fun thing to do, but if you understand why you're doing it beyond just kind of the obvious, then I think people are less, um,
Mhm.
reluctant to get the job done. So yeah. communicating why is definitely the most important thing.
Yeah. Time tracking is probably one of the best examples to get
Yeah.
after here. So the argument everyone wants to make is that it's like, I don't want to micromanage. It's like, yeah, but like if you frame this up as a positive for the team of like, hey, if I know where your time's going, then I can help you get more resources to help with like this thing takes you 6 hours. I know we should probably aim for like 3. I'm going to help
Right.
you be able to do that. Or like, I'm not going to overburden you with more tasks if I know it's actually going to take longer than we expect.
Yeah,
Um,
and I don't think it's micromanaging.
mhm,
And someone who's told they have to log time might think that, but it's not about micromanaging. I mean, first of all, you're probably billing by the hour, even if you're not, even if you're doing fixed fee work. And a lot of our customers are doing both. You still want to know where your time is being spent. And so I used to be a software engineer, and when I was working at other companies, I had to log my time. I didn't really
mhm.
enjoy doing it, but I understood that this was just part of the job. And of course, we were using Jira, and it wasn't maybe the best tool for doing that, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's something that has to get done.
Right. Yeah. When I was running an agency, it was, I mean, time tracking was just part of our flow. It was definitely annoying for everyone, but we didn't have a ton of issues with people doing it. But I was talking with one of our developers and he had a stream deck and had basically rigged all the buttons so that he could just start time on various tasks and stop time and everything. So he never had to actually open the time management tool. He was just right from his desk, would just click, oh, I'm doing this now, click it. It would start the timer. Um, so like if we
It's
had a system like that, right, that's awesome for everybody.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, he was a nerd, so I don't know that everyone can do that. Um, Shifting gears a bit, so let's say someone does adopt new like work management tool. What are the things that they usually get wrong with like just the initial structuring of it? Like, what should they be tracking? What should they be thinking about setting up? Um, and then why don't they?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we see is sometimes a company can just over architect what they're trying to do. Now, for example, in Ravetree, you can create really simple projects, simple tasks,
Mhm.
or you can create really complex structures with dependencies, nested tasks, is 10 levels deep if you need. And I think sometimes companies can kind of over architect what they're trying to do. And it's easy for someone with an engineering mindset to want to do that, but I think keeping it as simple as possible is always the best approach. um,
Mhm.
and that can still mean you've got nested structure and dependencies and so on, but um, start simple, add complexity only when you need it, when you find that you're not getting the data that you need, or whatever it may be. But don't start complicated and then simplify from there,
Mhm.
because what can happen, especially if you're moving from an environment where there's no process, and then you say, okay, we're going to get this new tool and then we're going to add this really complex process, that's culture shock to a company.
Mhm.
And if you're not a manager who's you know on a day-to-day basis extracting that data, you're just kind of a doer, then that's going to be confusing to you, and you're probably going to go against it at some level. So yeah, just keep it as simple as possible. Definitely. So it's good advice for anything, really.
Mhm. With Ravetree, do you, or I guess across all your clients, do you guys find you have more project managers like structuring everything within their accounts, running that, or like I don't know, maybe like a head of operations or something that's kind of overseeing everything and aligning the pieces for the project managers to just kind of execute the work within the system?
So more on the project manager side of things. Usually, there's a handful of power users that are
Yep.
typically project managers. A lot of times, the agency owners, principals, presidents, whatever their title may be, managing directors, um, they're not necessarily in their day to day. They'll go in there at the end of the week, the end of the month, look at some metrics, things like that. But it's the project managers that are, um, you know, the power users for sure.
Right. Um, yeah, I'm trying to. When we were running an agency, I think all of our marketers were also their own project manager for that account. But we had like it's when I was head of ops, like I kind of built out everything in our system of like, hey, here's the path we're all going to take. Let me do like the high level thinking for you, and then you just work within this system for your clients. That seemed to work well for us, but we were also, uh, I don't know, like we weren't in pods or anything, but it felt very much like we were empowering each individual user. So like it wasn't the most streamlined, I guess is what I'm saying. Like every person could kind of do what they wanted within the accounts themselves. And yeah, I don't know. That was the best way. In retrospect, the best way to run things. And so,
yeah, I mean, I think it's I mean, there's a balance, right? And it depends on the agency, right? A 10-person agency is very different from like an 80-person agency, even. So when you get to that size, which for an agency is kind of a little bit on the larger end. I mean, obviously there's agencies with thousands of people, but most are in that kind of smaller range. But when you get above, a number where you've got more than one team, you want to have a little bit, you want to offer or allow for a little bit of autonomy between the different teams, but still kind of have like an overall structure in which everyone adheres.
Yeah, I imagine there's a bit of so like in the military, we have command and control, and they're just on different ends of the same spectrum, right? Where it's like command is more, I want to give you the mission and just trust you to go take care of it, versus control, where it's like kind of basic training style. Like I do not trust you to actually solve things. Let me walk you through this. And like everyone exists kind of on that spectrum somewhere. And so like more experienced teams might be able to run the command play versus like, hey, we have a lot of like very junior team members. So let me lean into the control side. Yeah. So I guess I could see that having the ability to move around on that spectrum within whatever work management platforms as your team does get better, you can kind of shift that way. I think that would be great.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, so I guess you brought up like how we don't want to move from being complex to being simple. We'd rather move from simplicity to complexity as we need to adopt other things. What are some of like those data points that we want to be able to identify within our work management system so that our agency can thrive?
Yeah, I think the most common one is utilization rates. Just knowing, who's overutilized, underutilized. When do we need to bring on more designers or more content writers, whatever it may be. But yeah, just tracking utilization, definitely.
Yeah. And is there so like utilization, a lot of agencies think about it differently with like how much they're utilizing and like what percentage do we actually move up? Do we need everyone at 100%? Do we want wiggle room at 90? Right. I guess, do you have recommendations for how they even view that?
Not really, just because we've seen so many different philosophies on that. But, one of the things that just maybe to go off on a little bit of a pitch with Ravetree for a second, but one of the things that we do around utilization and allowing them to accurately track it is pulling in events and meetings, from their Google Calendar or Outlook calendar. So, Ravetree, you're assigned a task for 4 hours a day or, whatever it may be. And that all adds up. And okay, now we're at like 7 hours and, we've got 8 hours of availability. But then if you're in a 2-hour meeting, then you're over 1 hour, right? So now we're actually pulling in those calendar events. So they will impact your availability on the schedule, on the utilization feature in Ravetree. But yeah, I mean, we've seen agencies say, well, you've got, you work 8 hours a day, but like really, if you're at 6 hours, then we consider that 100%. 2 hours of kind of flex time for other things, meetings or whatever.
Internal, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it varies a lot, and we see a lot of different things. We actually had one customer, and the one person at the company, and they were like maybe like a 28 or 30 person agency, something like that. And she was booked for like 35 hours, like a day, so, well, that's impossible.
Good to catch that.
But I think she was like assigning herself to everything that she was managing, which, we kind of instructed her on a better way to do it. But
right. Yeah,
That's a
that makes
big
sense. And so that brings up like another good insight. Like even for like the founders and managers, right, who do want that oversight on everything, like they should be tracking their time, like what tasks they're actually having to put in effort on, because that's going to influence what the rest of the team has to do. And if they need to hire, they can see all these things. How do you recommend like the leadership team actually gets in, sees the data that they need to without having to be personally involved in every task?
Well, I mean, it's just a matter of how they choose to sort of attach themselves to that work, right? So if you're a manager, you're managing, let's say you're managing like 6 people, 8 people, whatever. Um, you don't need to assign yourself to all the same tasks. I mean, you can, but in Ravetree, we've got this concept of an owner, right? So you can be the owner of a task, which you can interpret however you want, but typically that'd be like the manager. And then you've got the assignees. So we'll say just add yourself as an owner to all these tasks that you're managing, but you're not the assignee. And then you can run reports in Ravetree and say, well, show me total hours for, based on things I'm assigned as opposed to things where I'm the owner. And you can get a nice kind of
Right.
sort of split between the two. And instead of that scenario I was mentioning where someone was booked for like 35 hours on a day, because they were assigning themselves to things and didn't realize that they could actually segment sort of total managed hours, let's say, versus, assigned hours.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. And as an owner, they can still get all the notifications and everything that they would want for the tasks.
Right. In fact, we even have a third thing where you can be a follower. So if you're the owner or the assignee of a task or a project or whatever, then you're automatically added as a follower, and the followers are basically people who get the notifications. But you can disable that. So you could say, well, I want to be the owner but not be a follower, or I want to follow it and I'm not an owner or an assignee. But for whatever reason, you still just want to be in the loop regarding updates on that particular item.
Right. Makes sense. Shifting gears a bit, is there a methodology that you've been seeing work better for agencies, like agile, anything like that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So we early on we sort of like we were in the agile thing, and maybe that's because I came from software where agile's real big, and at the time, agile marketing was kind of a big thing. A lot of people were talking about it. Seems like I don't hear that as much anymore. Yeah. Agile marketing. And maybe it was more so in like marketing departments as opposed to in agencies, but we still used to hear it. I think now it's like, honestly, waterfall is what we see more of, using Gantt charts, creating dependencies, and there's some elements of agile that are sort of integrated into that waterfall, that traditional waterfall mindset. But, I think in looking back at the time when we were more kind of focused on agile, like we used to have explicit constructs in Ravetree for sprint management and things like that. And you can still do that in Ravetree. You can do it actually really well, probably better than before. But I think there's a lot of rituals around being agile. If you want to just go like buy the book, agile, you've got your like daily stand-ups, you've got, sprints, epics, user stories, and so on, story points. I mean, I think a lot of that stuff is just, I think it gets in the way. It's just my personal opinion. But what we're seeing, I get, there's fewer people that are saying, hey, we're agile. Can Ravetree help us with our agile project management methodology? And the answer there is yes, but we don't hear that as much anymore. It's mostly, they're not even really talking about methodologies. They just are waterfall, and
right.
They don't really think of it that way, though.
Interesting. Yeah, because I imagine, like, if I was an agency working with software companies, that I would want to align with like an agile type play, so that it's like we're speaking the same language as we're going through. And so,
no, that's true. In fact, there was an agency they sold story points. So like instead of hours, like, hey, you can buy, 20 hours of work, per week or whatever, they would sell story points. And I thought that was kind of weird. And I guess, their customers were, software companies, but
right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like speak and sell to to what they already know.
Yeah, it's a little bit ambiguous,
the
though. You know,
Yeah, oh, it definitely is.
what do 8 story points mean? And
Mhm.
different people think of it in different ways, but yeah,
Right. Yeah, they'd have to.
it's strange terminology, or like t-shirt sizes instead of story points. Those are like, this is an extra large
Mhm.
epic, or whatever that means. I mean, for
Right.
me personally, I like hours because it's unambiguous. Like,
Mhm.
oh, it's gonna be 10 hours. Okay, I know what that is. Um,
Right.
but I still like some of the agile concepts. I think it in just like a general sense, it makes sense to be agile, lowercase a.
Mhm.
Not necessarily capital A with all the rituals, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
everybody's different.
No, and I think with like the tools available today to be able to help us get work done, it's like at agile, like being able to line up sprints and just continuously work on like a single focus at a time, like just seems to make more sense right now. Um, and maybe I'm sure people could disagree. Like, well, no, now I can do tons of different things in the same amount of time, or
Yeah,
you can do
no,
one. Yeah.
I think sometimes it comes down to just like the terminology. Like a company might be agile, and they're doing sprints, but they don't call it that. They
Mhm.
might not even be aware of the terminology, that there is this methodology called agile, but that they're behaving as if they are.
Right.
So the terminology is less important. The mindset is, I think, what's more important. So you
Mhm.
can have an agile mindset and operate in a what might be considered a more traditional waterfall workflow. Again, with Gantt charts and dependencies and so on. Because dependencies, I mean, it's not to say that like you can't have dependencies if you're doing agile, and but I think sometimes people view it that way. And in an agency setting, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of dependencies. A lot of this depends on something getting done before. Maybe it's a
Mhm.
design or whatever. So, um, yeah, the terminology, in my opinion, doesn't matter as much. It's just the mindset.
Right. Yeah, I like anytime I'm looking at actually executing something, I kind of break it down by mindset, skill set, tool set, and like that's the
Okay.
order we should flow in. So like, let's make
Yeah,
sure we're thinking about this right. Then let's make sure we have the actual skills to do it, and then what tools can help us do all of this faster.
yeah,
Um,
that makes a lot of
hasn't
sense. I like that.
Yeah, hasn't failed me yet, but we'll see. I'm sure could just be right around the corner.
Yeah, hopefully.
Um, yeah, cheers. So or I guess, what is like a belief that you have for how agencies should operate that like founders push back on? Like it's one of the early things that they're super hesitant to execute. But you're like, man, if you just did this, like your life would be so much easier.
That's a good question. I can't think of a good answer right offhand. Beyond maybe what I touched on earlier, which is just like like enforce what you want to get out of the tool, and communicate why they need to use whatever tool in
Mhm.
order to get the data that management needs. Yeah,
Mhm.
I guess I just don't have a great answer for that one, to be honest.
Yeah, I guess if I could potentially even reframe your advice, tell me if it's wrong. But even just slowing down to be more intentional about how you're actually using the tools. I think everyone has fallen into this. I don't know if it's from hustle culture or what. It's like everyone wants to move very fast. So I get
Mhm.
the tool up, let's get going, like get the work in, right? Let's just keep moving. Versus like, all right, we're actually going to roll this out over a month or maybe 60 days. We're going to
Yeah.
make sure that every step that we're taking is deliberate, so that once we do hit the sprint portion, we're good. We have no questions. Like everybody's on the same page. The system is refined. Um, yeah, I guess I don't know if that lines up.
Yeah, well, I think that goes along. Yeah, it's kind of maybe similar to what I was trying to say, but probably couldn't get it out as well as you did. But yeah, just it goes back to communication. Like
Mhm.
why, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Everyone needs to understand that, and then people can go off and do their thing.
Right.
But if they just go off and do their thing, and everyone's running around scrambling, and
Mhm.
We have seen agencies like that. They're just like, they have so much work. They have like, they have like 50, 10-minute things that they have to do every day. And then it's just, you can't remember all of it. And and it's hard to really like have just to know like in what direction you should be headed. It's
right.
So,
yeah. Cause I think a lot of people do fall into that, like the move fast and break things kind of culture. But even if you're going to do that, like it requires you slowing down enough to be able to document what you're breaking so that you can make sure like you're testing things as you go. But to run a test, you have to have a hypothesis, right? You have to have like the criteria to decide, is this conclusive? Like, is it a failure or what? And yeah, I think that gets missed a lot. Like people, it's like they're building kind of by accident rather than intentionally. And so,
yeah. And of course that mindset, came from software developers where I think maybe that makes more sense than in an agency setting. I mean,
I agree.
It could still make sense sometimes, but yeah, I mean, if you're a product like if you're like Ravetree and you're just building this one thing, then maybe you can take that approach. But when you're building something that you've been asked to build by someone else, then you kind of need to be a little more careful with how you're moving. Yeah.
Okay. I've got 2 more questions for you as we bring this one home. With the first being, what book do you recommend every agency owner should read?
Yeah, so there's probably better people to ask that question, but I'll tell you a book that I did read, and I've got it here on my desk. And I read it, maybe a couple months ago. It's called "Get to the Top of Google." It's like an SEO book, but it was about with all the AI capabilities, how you can still sort of be found with with all the new AI tools and LLM models that are out there. So I got a lot out of that book. Now, I am not a marketing professional, so but I imagine there's some nuggets in there that people who are marketing professionals could still find useful. So I thought it was a good book.
Yeah, it's still like the Wild West for like that topic. And so I think even across all the like SEO agencies I work with, they're like, we don't know. Like we're still guessing and trying to figure things out. So probably worth a read for everybody.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast it's evolving. But yeah, it still seems to be a bit of a mystery. There's all kinds of techniques people have that seem to make sense, and I guess time will tell. I mean, we'll probably look back at this time in 5 years and it'll be obvious, but right now it's not so obvious.
Yeah. Last question for you is, where can everyone find you?
So you can, if you mean me as in Ravetree,
both.
Then, ravetree.com. We're in my humble opinion, the world's best agency work management platform. We've got more capabilities, yet we're very easy to use than pretty much every other tool out there. So ravetree.com. As far as me personally, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to be more active, making posts when I feel like I've got something useful to say. But otherwise, I'm not too active on social media. I don't do, X or anything like that. I'm basically just LinkedIn is probably about it for me. Yeah.
Your LinkedIn approach is probably still 100 times better than most of the people who are just trying to pump stuff out with AI. So that's a win. Yeah. Awesome, Davidson. Thanks for joining.
Yeah. Well, Chris. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Awesome. That's the show, everyone. You can leave a rating and review, or you can do something that benefits you. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to Agency Forward on Substack. You'll get weekly content, resources, and links from around the internet to help you drive your agency forward.